We will continue looking at the irregularities section. In the previous video, we looked at submitting an irregularity report. In this video, we will look at group irregularities. Let's talk about group irregularities. Group irregularity is one that affects a group of examinees, one room, or the entire site. If a group irregularity occurs, take security measures to safeguard test materials whenever possible and to follow the instructions outlined for that irregularity. So these are examples of group irregularities. Missing or stolen test materials. Examples: post-test counts do not match what was distributed. Examinee attempts to leave with test materials. Secure materials are unaccounted for at any time, before, during, or after testing. This category is security. Number 1, recover the missing materials if possible. 2, call ACT immediately. Another example of group irregularity: interruptions or disturbances. Examples: unexpected visitor, a noise or distraction in the room, sudden illness. This category will be considered an environmental or technical issue. These are the steps you will need to follow. Number 1, if you can take action to eliminate the disturbance, do so. Otherwise, instruct examinees to stop testing. Number 2, if the interruption affects all examinees, lock the test session in Pearson Access Next on the administrative computer. 3, instruct examinees to log out of TestNav. 4, make note of the time. 5, determine if you can resume testing. 5A, if you can resume testing, go to step 6. If you cannot resume testing, call ACT for next steps. 6, resume testing when possible. 6A, pick up timing where you left off. Emergency evacuations. Examples of emergency evacuations: fire alarm, severe weather, public safety concern. This category would be considered an environmental category. These are the steps. Step 1, get examinees and staff to safety. 2, if possible, make note of the time and have examinees log out of TestNav. 3, if possible, lock the test session in Pearson Access Next on the administrative computer and collect the test materials or lock the test room. 4, call ACT when safe to do so. Power outages. Examples: loss of electricity, affecting room comfort or equipment. Category: environmental. These are the steps. For a brief outage, follow the instructions for interruptions or disturbances. 2, for an extended outage, call ACT for next steps. Reschedules. Examples: severe weather or facility issues that prevent you from starting any testing. This will be considered an environmental category. Reschedule to another day within your testing window. Missed timings. Examples: timepiece malfunction, examinee tested with the wrong timing assignment, staff miscalculated stop time. Category: examinee or staff. Call ACT immediately to determine next steps. Note, if a retest is necessary, examinees must retake all tests, not just the one that was mistimed. All right, so now we're going to look at individual irregularities. An individual irregularity is one that affects a single person or several individuals involved in a single circumstance. Examples include communicating answers to each other. If an individual irregularity occurs, follow the instructions outlined for that irregularity. Examinees who leave and return. Examples: examinee needs to use the restroom. Examinee feels ill and needs to leave the room. Examinee returns late from break. This category would be considered examinee. These are the steps. Step 1, collect and secure the examinee's test materials. Give them back upon return. Note, do not have the examinee log out of TestNav. TestNav should continue running while the examinee is gone. 2, time the examinee's departure. Record the lost time on the irregularity report. 3, if examinee returns during the same test, have the examinee continue testing where they left off and stop when time is called in the room. Lost time cannot be made up. 4, if examinee returns during a later test, do not let the examinee go back to a previous test. Provide the seal code to continue testing. Have the examinee start the current test and stop when time expires according to the timepiece used by the room supervisor. Lost time cannot be made up. Let's discuss number 4. So what number 4 is saying is this. If a student, let's say, goes to the restroom towards the end of test 1, comes back, let's say during test 2. So test 2 has already started. Now remember, test 2 is math, which is 60 minutes. For standard time, for standard time and all timing codes besides 6 and 7, so timing code 1, timing code 2, timing code 3, and timing code 5, the computer keeps time. So for that student that, let's say, leaves at the end of test 1 and comes back after test 2 started, that student does not have 60 minutes left. That student has lost that time. So if the student comes back, let's say 10 minutes after test 2 started, that student has lost 10 minutes, meaning that student only has 50 minutes left. The room supervisor must keep track of that student's time, because when that student logs into test 2, that timing starts. So the timer is going to say 60 minutes, but that student does not have 60 minutes. It is the room supervisor that needs to keep track of the time for that student, because whenever the student enters the seal code, that's when the timer starts. Okay, so be careful. That's why it's not a good idea to have students go to the restroom during a test, especially towards the end of a test, because they may not return at the beginning of the second test or at the beginning of the fourth test. So be careful with the restroom breaks. All right, note, only one examinee may leave the test room at a time. If 2 or more examinees need to leave at the same time, or if other rooms have been dismissed, the examinees must be accompanied by a proctor. Do not leave a test room unsupervised at any time. Examinees who leave and do not return. So for example, examinee becomes ill and cannot continue testing. Examinee does not return after break. Examinee leaves before testing is completed. Category: examinee. Note, examinees cannot return to an incomplete test. It is the examinee's best interest to complete a test before leaving and/or not begin a new test if they feel they may need to leave. These are the steps. Number 1, collect and secure the examinee's test materials and log the examinee out of test nav. Decide if tests should be scored or if the examinee should be rescheduled for makeup testing. Manually mark the examinee's test complete in Pearson Access Next. 3, if testing over multiple days, schedule examinee to complete the remaining test in sequence within the testing window. Test item challenges. Examples: examinee thinks a test item is unclear. Examinee does not believe there is a correct answer choice listed. Examinee finds a typographical error in a test item. These are the steps. Number 1, if an examinee challenges typographical errors in the test or ambiguities, instruct the examinee to choose an answer based on the information available and report the details of the challenge after the test is over. 2, record the following information on the irregularity report: examinee's name, examinee's address, C, the test item number being challenged, D, examinee's question about the item. Note: for security purposes, do not include a copy or image of the test item. Another individual irregularity would be attempts to copy test materials. Examples: taking pictures of test items or materials, taking notes about the test, handwritten or through electronic means, such as a cell phone or calculator, scanning or making copies of test materials. This would be an examinee, security, or staff category. These are the steps. Number 1, do not allow staff or examinees to duplicate or record any part of the test by copying, taking notes, photographing, scanning, or any other means. 2, ensure all secure materials are collected and returned. 2A, room supervisors must collect all materials from examinees before they are dismissed. 2B, room supervisors must return all materials to the test coordinator immediately after testing. C, the test coordinator must pack and return materials to ACT following testing. Number 3, if you observe an examinee attempting to copy test materials using a photographic recording or scanning device or removing test materials, dismiss them for prohibited behavior. A, confiscate and clear any devices used in an attempt to copy materials. B, inform the examinee the test will not be scored. Manually mark the examinee's test complete in Pearson Access Next. C, note all details on the irregularity report. And number 4, call ACT immediately to determine if additional action is needed. Another example of individual irregularity is irrational behavior. Examples: examinee yells or disrupts the test room. Examinee becomes violent. Examinee places self or others in danger. These are the steps. Number 1, try to prevent other examinees from being interrupted, affected, or involved. 2, handle the behavior as quietly as possible without physical force or contact. 3, if necessary, call security or police to protect staff and other examinees safely. 4, collect and return the disruptive examinee's test materials. Collect and retain the disruptive examinee's test materials. Number 5, dismiss the examinee and inform the examinee the test will not be scored. Manually mark the examinee's test complete in Pearson Access Next. And 6, note details on the irregularity report. Another individual irregularity: refusal to turn in test materials. Examples: examinee will not allow the room supervisor to collect test materials. These are the steps. Number 1, Warn the examinee that taking the test materials is considered theft of ACT's property and will be reported to ACT or other appropriate authorities. 2. Call ACT immediately, providing the examinee's name. 3. Do not place yourself in a position of physical danger, and do not leave other test materials or examinees unattended. So this will take care of the irregularities, describing group and individual irregularities. If you need more clarification about group or individual irregularities, you can contact me or you can contact ACT.